Okay, so I really want to understand, because we started talking about this before the break, but I really want to get into it so I can understand, so our audience can understand, because I do think that this is the crux of the whole argument here, right? So we have these sort of like nefarious things that have happened, and people are sort of blaming the pseudonymous entities, and then there's also some talk about the software. Can you explain again who really deserves the blame here? The code, the people? What do you think?
So in this situation, specifically with Tornado Cash is a piece of software, not a company. It exists autonomously. The software was deployed for a very specific purpose, which is to protect the privacy of people who use it. If someone uses that privacy that they're gaining from using Tornado Cash to do something that is against the law, that is the individual's choice, and that action is their decision, which they can actually still be held accountable for in many other ways. If somebody decides to hide their money from the government and not pay taxes, if they do something that is nefarious, like potentially laundering drug money or some other nefarious entity's money, that money will show up somewhere. They will buy a house, they will buy a car, they'll buy, an island somewhere. They'll show up with a passport and they'll go and purchase something using that cash. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Tornado Cash. You can still prosecute that kind of behavior. It's just a little bit harder. So what's happening here seems to be sort of a shortcut, or perhaps laziness by the authorities, that is them essentially choosing to avoid actually fixing the problem at hand, which is that they're not able to prosecute these people, and instead trying to shut down an entire generation of technology, as opposed to actually trying to understand it and actually go through the nuance. And that's not to say that there aren't people at the FBI or the IRS or these organizations that understand what's going on here. It's just that this particular action seems to be a very kind of heavy-handed choice, and potentially could cost them a lot down the line. It's going to set a very bad precedent in the future.
I agree, but I will say, I'm going to push back a little bit. So you do agree, obviously, that money laundering should be punished.
Yes, absolutely.
So
It's against the law, period. And there's very good
right,
reasons for this.
right. So at what point then does it make sense to target the people responsible? And again, I don't know the answer. I'm not saying you should shut down Tornado Cash. It does seem a little bit extreme. Do you think that you should wait until the money has been laundered and then they catch them after? Like, if you know there's going to be a lot of money laundered in one specific place, doesn't it seem a bit logical that that place should have some sort of sanctions, some sort of regulations?
It sounds like they should prosecute certain island nations that help money laundering along the way. The same logic could apply to an enormous number of tax haven countries and all sorts of other places like casinos that are used to launder money. Laundering money has been done for centuries at this point, I'm quite sure. And no one has ever tried to shut down certain casinos that do this kind of behavior. But in this particular case, where we're talking about trustless autonomous code, the code itself is not at fault. The people who contribute to that code base are not at fault. The people who have chosen to use that thing in a nefarious way are the ones that have committed a crime. And to sanction every single person that's associated with Tornado Cash is essentially to say that every single person who's used Tornado Cash is involved in money laundering, which is simply not true. There are tons of other reasons to protect your privacy when transmitting money online. There are even many more reasons that this could actually cause people who are trying to do something good, where they need the privacy associated with that, who probably are actually trying to do something quite reasonable, where they simply don't want to have that paper trail because it's going to get them into legal hot water with a government or another entity, which is why this technology exists in the first place. Those people are the ones that will suffer from this behavior. And so this heavy-handed gesture by the government will most likely result in actual people who have done nothing wrong being harmed, which seems to me like even more of a crime, to be totally honest. It seems like almost laziness.
Well, look, you argue very, very persuasively, and I think our audience is going to love this episode. But okay, let's ask about the protests, because there's protests that have emerged, right, regarding privacy rights on the blockchain, specifically because of the way Tornado Cash has been sanctioned. Why are people so passionate about maintaining the privacy in Web3?
Well, so money is the root of all evil, but it is also the root of all commerce. And so if you wanted to create a new internet, one that is owned by the people and preserves their privacy and gives them the ability to actually use the information system that we all now use to transmit all of our ideas and share all of our feelings in a way that actually preserves their own sanctity as individuals, then that system, this internet that we're trying to create, needs to be rooted in sound money. It needs to be rooted in privacy, and it has to have these core tenets. If it does not, then the privacy associated with that money and the lack of privacy will eventually lead to a lack of privacy down the line for all of the systems that come to bear. And so we cannot create a new internet that preserves your privacy, where your information and your personal actual life is preserved, where you can have the same kind of privacy online that you do offline, unless we can also preserve the privacy of the money behind that system. Economics is all based on this. We can't have a commercial entity online that has privacy if the back end of that system is completely open and
we're going to
has
go to
no privacy.
break. I appreciate what you're doing. We'll be back on the Daily Drive.